On October 1492, Christopher Columbus sailed the ocean blue. Tonight, show some clustering for you. Tonight, a very special Algos and Jen episode. We're going to talk about one of the most entertaining topics in data science and in algorithms, clustering. And before we get to clustering, I just want to shout out to Boston Red Sox leading the ALDS versus Tampa Bay Rays. And to tribute to them, I'll have a nice bipartite graphs tribute to them. And of course, tonight we're going to go for some Teen Titans, you know, the good old 2000s show that I enjoyed on my Hawaii trip on a nice 11-hour flight. And we're going to have to deal with Slade tonight as well. So if you've not seen the movie, I'm sorry for the spoiler alerts, but this movie is pretty good. The Teen Titans go to the movies. Without further ado, here's Algos and 10 episode 7, Teen Titans Cluster. So as you can see from my slides, it's going to be a bit of a long episode tonight, so bear with me. Yeah, and of course, to be PC and follow Boston rules, it's also called Indigenous Peoples Day today. So not just only Columbus, it's Indigenous Peoples Day. You do you. Of course, it's sponsored by Hawaiian Airlines and mahalo for a great vacation, which means thank you in Hawaiian. Absolutely fantastic. The topics tonight. Gonna have a quick quiz about clustering, stable matching review, because everybody wants to be in a relationship, I guess, now in times, and it's really great, awesome, especially given how tough it is to do during COVID. And of course, bipartite graphs, which I talked about, and Cohen graphs review. And then actually, just to throw back to my BU computer science years, induction proof of the elbow rule, which is pretty awesome. And then we have a 5-parter for the Robin, Starfire, Beast Boy, Cyborg, and Raven versus Slade. And then of course, we'll have episode 8 preview, which is going to resort to Gaussian mixed models, libraries, and actually introduction to NPs. So we're just like the Boston Marathon. We're now basically almost at the finish line for polynomial or the P times. So for you guys who are still putting up Algos and 10, even during COVID and even middle of October, kudos to you. Congratulations. So a quick quiz. How to determine the best approximate size of a cluster? I'll give you a hint. It's a part of on your body. Okay, here's the answer. The elbow rule, that's what your elbow, the elbow rule, given a particular graph. So a little stable matching review. As you know, stable matching is one of the first algorithms that have been taught at Boston University, and it actually enticed me and my good friend Jesus, shout out to him tonight, from BU years, during one of our projects called Stabler, which is like a stable matching dating application. And now, of course, in the season of dating, I really am enjoying stable matching. So anyways, it's not just only dating. It could be related to mentors and mentees. It's a bit of a shout out to my Dell managed boarding tonight. So yeah, this is a very simple algorithm, O(n)² algorithm. It's really just coming down to you either accept a mentor, reject a mentor, or defer to the next person. It's sort of like how Tinder works. Accept, swipe right, reject, swipe left, or just put on a queue. Anyway, in regards to stable matching, we have the mentors and mentees. Don't necessarily worry about boys or girls. This is something completely different. There's each new hire will be assigned to a mentor. And of course, the mentor's job is to properly onboard that new mentee, new hire. So how do we solve this problem? We have something called the Gail Shadley algorithm. And the algorithm is actually quite easy. It'll be shown on the next slide. So here's the algorithm. It's iterative for 2 for loops, hence O(n)². And let me give you a little quick drawing of what I mean by that. So when I talk about the general algorithm here, I talk about 2 sets. So here's a set of mentors. And here's the set of mentees. And these sets are disjoints. So the intersection of mentor-mentee is, of course, if you remember from set theory, a null set. So for each round, the mentor or mentee can do the following. They can accept the onboarding relationship, reject it, or defer to the next available mentorship or menteeship. And of course, this goes on for like N to M, so it's iterative. If the mentor-mentee or any pairing has not already yet been taken, we are assuming unique people, no twins, of course. Then we'll repeat until each pairing has been taken. And the results will probably onboard each mentee to each mentor. So for example, let's say you have mentor A and mentee B, right? Mentor A may not like mentee B because, I don't know, he is not his type or she's not his type or whatever. He could say no. Or he thinks, oh my God, mentee B is like the Steve Jobs of this place. He's an awesome mentor. I'll definitely take him. Or I'm not sure. This mentor may or may not be maybe a little sus, like Among Us. Or maybe watching Squid Game while doing algorithms. A little violent, I don't know. So you may say, I'll think about it. Anyway, the point is mentor A here can also do the same for mentee B. So this is called what we call an independent set between the two of them, an independent set. Now, don't get me wrong, I am not a probability buff by any means, but I do know at least how set theory works. And I do have an awesome book to recommend in the descriptions, which is Velleman's How to Prove It. For anybody who wants to get a nice computer science review for the interviews or leak code or good old comp sci review of set theory, I recommend Velleman's How to Prove It. Fantastic BUCS 131 coursework that gave me the opportunity to understand set theory. And of course, enjoy how to do this stuff. So I'm not going to clear my drawings and move on to the next slide. Of course, there's a caveat. This is assuming that neither N nor M is not two more or less within each other. If it is, you'll have leftovers, and that will break the algorithm. Now, here's the fun part. The ALDS, Red Sox and Rays. Sorry, Yankees. We already know, okay, this is obviously made before the Red Sox won again, so apologies for hindsight. We already know this series is tied 1-1. So far, the Red Sox and Rays have won 1 game apiece. There are now just 3 games left in the best-of-5 series. Apply a 2-color. Wow, Halloween must be coming early. My lamp is haunting me right now. Apply a bipartite 2-color node matching algorithm to determine what is the best chance for each team to win, given a red node be a Red Sox pitcher and a blue node be a Tampa Bay Rays starting pitcher. So for a graphical bipartite, you have to have 3 rules. 1, obviously they can't connect each other. You can't have like a connection between these nodes. That's not bipartite. 2, they have to be matched, which means they have to have at least a 1-to-1 mapping. And 3, they can be injective, which means they have all 3 of the Tampa Bay Rays battle Chris Sale or something. Like all 3 of Tampa Bay Rays starters will be pitching their innings, and Chris Sale will just be still dealing strikeouts in 1 inning. And this solution is still in p-complete time, which means polynomial. Very important. But if you change up the ordering of the games that respective starting pitchers, it becomes NP-complete. It'll become basically a form of vertex cover, which is something that's very advanced and we'll talk about in the finale episode. And because the Red Sox have 2 games at home and 1 more on the road, this is why it was showing 2 Tampa Bay pitchers dealing 1 Red Sox pitcher because of home court advantage. And of course, it's nothing to do with the MLB baseball. It's just an example of bipartite graph. So we first applied the algorithm using bipartite graph shown on the left as a black box. For each remaining game in the ALDS, if we could split each of the wins and losses into independent sets. So what do I mean by that? Let me annotate again. Independent sets, I mean red for Red Sox win, of course. Let's say Boston wins, I don't know. Let's say Boston wins these 2 games against Tampa Bay, which they sort of are doing right now, FYI. And this is an independent set. And let's say somehow we might knock on wood choke tonight, which would be sad, but that could happen. In that case, Tampa Bay then would have their independent set over here. as you can see, this particular game 4 is a vertex cover, which means that they cover each other in a set. Now, vertex cover independent sets are basically what we call duals of each other, which means just sort of like, plus or minus of a battery. They cancel out each other. So when you do a vertex cover, you have to think about what is its complement reduction. That's where MP sort of, gets hard. You have to know, it's sort of like, you have one piece of a puzzle, but where's the next piece? That type of stuff. So anyway, we can basically split the sets into wins and losses. We can determine at least who wins the games 3 and 4. And we can also narrow down each further mapping. We can also determine using BFS, breadth first search, on each remaining picture node for both Boston and Tampa Bay. And of course, as we're using algorithms here, we're going to have to enqueue the win red node for Boston and the blue node for Tampa Bay. And the resulting mapping will be split into best Boston winning, Tampa Bay losing, and of course, if you're a Rays fan, Tampa Bay winning, Boston losing results. The results of this graph will then become a perfect matching, which means each win and loss node will be perfectly aligned to either Boston or Tampa Bay. Now you're wondering, Jason, why are you talking about baseball with algorithms? Well, there's a concept called sabermetrics, which uses algorithms to basically tell you how baseball works. Look at Lisa Simpson's Moneyball or the Oakland A's Moneyball, even the Red Sox analytics as an example. And of course, for episode 8, we'll have a coding solution using bipartite graph library from Python. And actually, because it is really cool, in Java collections as well. That's right, I'm going to introduce Python's big brother and a much more popular programming language for system programmer, Java, in episode 8. So you can actually run Java in Python notebook. Fun, isn't it? So why do we have the stable matching and bipartite? So we basically now talk about the naivety or the birth of clustering. Now I'm going to be very, very clear here. Clustering does not mean a cookie jar. It doesn't mean this, what I'm about to draw. This is kindergarten clustering, dots in a circle. That's not what I mean by clustering. By clustering, I mean something more like this. You have a graph, a bunch of clusters here, right? You have a bunch of clusters here. Something that leads to a correlation of points in a data set. So why we have, drum roll, we have clustering as a data science concept and also actually an algorithm concept and actually a system concept once you get to nodes and like Hadoop and stuff. It's so important is because stable matching and bipartite graphs bring you two main concepts. The concept of stability, whether applying algorithms, say let's say k-means, relates to nodes in a particular group from a particular cluster which is considered stable, unstable. Fun fact, in one of my interviews for Northeastern Co-op and also for full-time before going to Dell, we were asked about stability of a graph for a Hadoop node. And I answered stability, which was really good, because stability is a particularly tough topic to understand, unless you understand how clustering works. It's definitely not as straightforward as stable matching, as you will see. And of course, a very, very famous graph algorithm, the node coloring. How many different groups of clusters can be formed from the k-mean centers, and other types of centroid calculations. So think about it. What would you think about a cluster from a high level, like Facebook analytics, or like, just a bunch of dots on a screen and like making a graph? It's really just a collection of data points that show a pattern. So a takeaway point is this: cluster is a collection of data points that show a pattern. That's your little TLDR for the night. Boom. See you later. Have a good evening. Just kidding. We're not done yet. So let's talk about the elbow rule. I sort of low-key screenshotted this from my BU and Northeastern algorithms book from CLRS about the clusters and the number of cluster variants. Now this mathy stuff really just says that some clusters and the inner sum of the distance and the outer sum of a cluster is interest cluster variance, but we're not going to get to some calculus or Raman sums here. That's too boring. What I want you guys to understand is this beautiful looking line over here. So let's just say we only have 2 data points. What's the optimal amount of clusters? Well, you can only have 2 because you only have 2 data points. You have 3 data points, it gets more interesting. You could have 1, 2, or 3. 4 data points, 1, 2, 3, 4. N data points, 1 to n minus 1. And of course, you want to do some real calculus, you could do a limit theorem for infinity data points. And the upshot is, as you can see, we get better and better approximation of the true number of clusters required with more data points. So let's say, for example, I continue interpolating here, like here, just dotting this thing like a polka dot or whatever. Like, how a 5-year-old child would just add a bunch of points and, basically Bob Ross or Jackson Pollock this thing. Or even like Columbus, just discover a bunch of continents and put them in a cluster, like eventually it'll just get you a nice looking line down here. And that's where you get the best fit line. So that's how correlation worked. Back in high school, when I did some pre-algebra in Worcester Academy, I didn't even know what it meant to be correlation. Now I know, and thank you, one of the highway project from Worcester Academy for teaching me that. So yeah, high school math really is good once you get to the real world. Calculus depends what you do. And of course, to roll back to BU years, I have an induction proof on the next slide. So proof of induction. Before we get into induction, there's 3 main types. There are more types, but 3 isn't enough. Weak, strong, and structural. And actually on my personal website, I do have some induction problems for you guys to try, which I will reveal the solutions in a bonus Algos in 10 episode. That's not Halloween, that's gonna be on Thanksgiving instead. To give thanks to my BU computer science program and my Northeastern program as well. So here's a very simple proof of induction where you have P of n plus 1 implies P of n. So the hypothesis is pretty simple. At any k less than n, and given any d data points, there are k plus 1 centers at distance d, where d is greater than 0 from each other. To illustrate that, because that looks like gibberish, let's say you have a box right here. And inside the box, you have a line. And inside this line, you have a bunch of dots. Dot, 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 dot. You have something called a data center, which is k. And you have a distance from each point up to a distance d. And of course, it's not Kevin Durant. It means k, the data centers, and d distance. So the base case is pretty simple. If you have no points, you have nothing. You have a blank space, no cluster. If you have only just a single point, you just have 1 cluster. Induction case gets a little mathy, so I'm gonna have to draw another line for you. Let's say P of n plus 1 holds. So for any k of n plus 1, which means if n plus 1 here, amount of data points, there are k plus 2 centers at distance d, and you could do a little algebra here. K plus 1 is k plus 2, and that equals the n plus 2. Because you remember, k could equal n at the worst case in this algorithm. Yeah, that's some basic algebra. And of course, they're all going to be less than distance d. Eventually, a new cluster would form at the distance of 2d, which is twice the original distance. And then you have this inequality that d less than or equal to k plus 2 less than or equal to 2d. So if we use inequality graph, which I learned from pre-algebra before, you can have the following. You can have k here, which is an open circle. You have a bunch of color here. You have a closed circle here. You have k plus 2. And you have another closed circle here, which is going to be 2d. And d is somewhere around here because it's a distance. And then finally, since we know the algorithm is iterative, which means it's in a for loop, and that n plus 1 holds, we can then conclude that P of n plus 1 holds. There we go, induction proof. GG. proof of induction can get pretty hard. So if you really want to review it well for interview or even just, I don't know, to show off your induction skills, definitely, once again, I suggest a development book for induction practice. Like CLRS is good, but it's sort of like a more of a big boys book because it gets into like some really crazy induction, which I'd never recommend anybody understand unless they're like doing like a PhD in like computer theory. And I've done a master's, so I know like how hard it could get. Finally, some kids stuff. Slade once again is causing trouble. It's up to the Titans to rescue them. And unfortunately, Slade can use divide and conquer to sort of screw the Titans, you know, mind, control, manipulation, by 5 separate clustering challenges. So can Robin, Starfire, Cyborg, Beast Boy, and Ravens separately figure out challenges and then band together to defeat Slade once and for all? We'll find out in the next episode. Oh yeah, and these are all NP complete, so we're not gonna have any algorithm to solve them. We're just gonna talk about them. And then of course, in episode 8, right before Halloween, we'll go through all the gory, you know, coding details, including that Java thing I talked about. So just gonna talk about each problem, and this is meant to be open-ended, so my solutions aren't gonna even be the best. You can solve them any way you want. As long as you defeat Slade, that's all matters. So problem 1, Robin. It's I like ice cream, you like ice cream, we all like ice cream, unless you're lactose intolerant. So first, Slade has targeted Robin, sort of a leader of the Teen Titans. He wants to trick Robin into thinking that there are some ice cream bars that are actually superpower food, while in reality, they're actually quite kryptonite and make Robin seriously ill, like COVID level ill. However, Robin himself has a stash of antidote should he fall ill. So we can apply a simple k-means algorithm to ensure that Robin eats the least amount of possible fake bars while eating just enough antidote given the confusion matrix. So let you guys think about it for a couple minutes, and I'll tell you what I would have done to solve this problem. All right, that's long enough. So you apply k-means. You basically plot, you know, in an RLC curve graph, all of this true, positive, true, negative stuff on RLC curve graph, and you apply k-means and find the cluster using the elbow method. And that will be shown in episode 8. And of course, the antidote is going to be like a region of the k-means, which we can also plot using Python Zell graphics. Now, part B with a little mainframe twist, because, you know, I'd be doing mainframes at Dell work now. Oh, sorry. So Cyborg, you know, the guy with the computer head and the, you know, that guy. So Slade has put Cyborg on the wrong floor, and Cyborg is a smart CS/DS engineering guy. He really is. However, he's not very good at finding directions, and he is stuck in a maze. So luckily, he has some mainframe knowledge about dataset allocations. So Slade has allocated the following data sets. Consider each dataset bit as a point in the k-means clustering algorithm. And use, of course, the conventional way of dot notation. So you have east with 20 bits, west with 40 bits, north with 10 bits, and south with 30 bits. And to annotate quickly, I'll show you what that means. But let's say the maze is sort of in memory, because Cyborg is, you know, a motherboard, a memory thing. And you have a memory on east, west, north, and south. And let's say the maze of Cyborg just goes all over the place, yeah? So in each strategic point, you got the coordinates of each one. And to make sure this works, we gotta make sure every one of these memories are allocated, which means a fancy mainframe word is saying they are filled with memory. So you're given now the 4 directions of north, east, west, and south. Use k-means to help Cyborg save the maze of doom, which will not be able to stay awake until he is 2 times recommended distance from starting point. So I'll let you guys think about the solution once again for a few minutes. Okay, that should be at least enough to think about something, right? So as you can already could pretty much bet, we're going to have to do a bunch of queues. So I would suggest using something called a collection queue, data set in this one, where you have a queue of north, east, south, and then you basically apply k-means to in queue whether sideboard should go east, should go west, should go north, should go south. And this actually gives you a shout out of an FSC design pattern called the factory design pattern, which means basically make a factory of different directions for sideboard to run in. And another great learning resource for design patterns is the O'Reilly books. Those are pretty good. And of course, I'll show the full solution in code in Python and actually with a nice looking graph in episode 8. And finally, of course, for the ladies, he's going down more of a dinner route, like they say, to get to a woman's heart, you go for her stomach. And same thing for the men. So of course, Starfire, who is that, girl who, shoots fires and is a star, is a pizza fanatic. And I love pizza as well, thanks to Hawaii. As attributed by the Teen Titans Go movie, she simply loves all things pizza. Unfortunately, Slade is as clever as he is in algorithms as he is in mind control. So Slade tries to sort of, hurt Starfire by giving her stomach pain. Making a false tries to make the famous Titans pizza, which is like a parody of Hawaiian pizza. To use Gaussian mixture models clustering to help her avoid that particular pain, which cluster is the three ingredients: pepperoni, cheese, and pineapple. So I won't exactly give you time to pause, but I'm going to talk about GMM right now. The GMM is a very complicated clustering model, but it has something really good that allows you to actually categorize a few clusters. So let's say, for example, Starfire is just, choosing pizza. And you have a big piece of pizza right here. And let's say for red, she wants some pepperoni slices, I don't know, here. And then for yellow, she'll have some cheese slices over here. And I already did yellow, and do orange for pineapple over here. This is the best case scenario. Everything is the same, and she'll obviously learn very quickly. Slade is very stupid. I could easily eat the whole pizza without ever facing stomach pain. However, now think about Slade being clever. Slade being clever here. Let's say he tries to move around a few dots, and then tries to screw her over with some other things. So she has like, orange over here. And then all of a sudden, Slade just giving, Starfire a headache and giving me a headache because I'm like, what is going on here? It looks like the fire or something. It doesn't look like pizza anymore. So that's saying right there that GMM then will be very useless because Slade will have to make Starfire go for every single permutation of the pizza. So the point is this thing gets NP complete because eventually it gets so complicated that there's no polynomial way to find out where the pizza is, because it gets into something called the traveling salesman problem. And that's another reduction you can do from pizza to traveling salesman problem. Or in layman terms, pizza reduces to traveling salesman problem. All right, that's like a preview of episode 8 again. Episode 8 is quite complicated, so definitely read and review all the things you've learned so far at Algos 10. That episode would be like a real checkpoint. And right before Halloween is meant to be very scary. So I myself personally have to review a few things while doing my Dell work. But it's all worth it in the name of data science. All right, part D, Raven dealing with some shady centroids. So Raven, since she's more of a psychic type of Teen Titan, Slade is trying to put some reverse psychology to trick her. Suddenly she's waking up at Teen Titans HQ after a late night party, enjoying the Red Sox, and because she is apparently a Baltimore Ravens fan, enjoying the Baltimore Ravens. And she is stuck in a circular room with 5 doors. Only one with a proper exit. The other one she basically does. To apply a centroid clustering algorithm to help Raven escape. And to tell you a little bit about this problem, it is NP because you have no way of knowing which room is which. So let's say you have the room right here, a circular room, and Raven is somewhere over here. And apparently each door, which I think is actually quite interesting, reminds me of the Doubting Philosopher's problem in a way. Each door may or may not be dangerous. So if Raven has no idea a priori how to figure this out, the best you can do is run a clustering data set and find a cluster with the most safest choices. And that's basically your solution. Episode 8 will tell you more about it. And of course, I have a very great Kaggle site from user Kohotjaz1 that will tell you via an iris data set how this solution would work. Except for that's just a 3-class thing, while for Raven thing is a 5-class thing. And finally, you got Beast Boy, and shout out to Mr. Beast. He is a good YouTuber. Yeah, so Slade finally puts Beast Boy into idle trance by being a fake guide for a zoo. Since Beast Boy can turn any animal of his own choosing, the Slade will use the biological and zoological confusion to his advantage. He'll even call it a dendrogram to confuse Beast Boy. So the Beast Boy has to actually use a heat map, which is a very fancy way of saying how the probability, how much each cluster will be concentrated in any particular data point. And to really draw a really crazy heat map, you know, in baseball, they have something called a heat check chart. It's something like this. They have like a bunch of colors and stuff. Like for example, let's say this is, I don't know, the hot spot for JD Martinez. And then this is like the cold spot for like Rafael Devers in the Boston Red Sox. The heat map, of course, will look a lot better than this. If you look at Python's Seaborn library, you'll definitely understand what I'm talking about. And essentially what you want to do is make a good enough heat map that it gives like tells a story of what's going on in the data set. So essentially run a 5-cluster node solution with a dendrogram, which is once again a fancy way of saying, you know, basically a class tree. So you have like a class tree over here, a dendrogram. And heat map to figure out the problem. And that will be shown in episode 8, because right now, I'm trying to show it now, is going to be a 3-hour-and-a-half episode. I want to see the Red Sox win. So I'm going to call it there. All right, we're at the end of this episode, which is a long one. So thank you for bearing with me and also reviewing great amount of Teen Titans and clustering knowledge. So episode 8, as I mentioned multiple times, we'll talk about different types of clustering, these cool looking patterns. A really great application of clustering with regards to actually COVID, the vaccine variants, and also learning how to like do epidemiology. But of course, I'm not going to talk about the thing, you know, quote unquote, scientifically, because, you know, avoid fake news. I also have a dendrogram over here, and finally, a nice looking heat map. So yeah, see you guys in 2 weeks for episode 8. And of course, it'll be before Halloween, because Halloween will be a special episode of Algorithm 10 with one of the more scarier topics in algorithms. Yep, you know what I'm going to be talking about. This topic is bad, very, very bad. And it's one of the topics that honestly, even leak code hearts cannot put up with. Medium and medians, that mom of bad algorithms. So yeah, indeed. And make sure to subscribe and like. This is Algos with Jason Liu. And of course, I'll see you guys in a couple of weeks. So yeah, let's go Red Sox. And of course, good luck to the Rays. And let's go Teen Titans. Thank you very much.